If HMRC is threatening to wind your company up, you are running out of time, and that is a big risk. If you don't act fast, you could risk losing everything. That's your business, your income, your staff, and your future. Today I'm telling you about a real life story of a payroll company that we supported. They were days away from HMRC winding them up. The creditors were circling, the debts were mounting, and the directors thought that it was game over. But we stepped in. We put the company into administration, the directors bought it back out of administration, and it saved the jobs, and they did it all legally. Now, if you're a business that's under pressure from HMRC right now and you are facing the threat of being wound up, please watch this video all the way through, because what we did for them, we can do for you too. Emily, welcome back to another Director First show.
Thank you.
Okay, so obviously, you know the drill with these things. We keep things anonymous. But can you tell me about the inquiry you took from this payroll company?
Of course. So I jumped on a Google Meet, this was. He was saying how HMRC, they owed them about £1 million. But HMRC had threatened them with a winding up petition. They were owed in about £600,000, but they didn't know when it was likely to come in. It was a short call because I flagged that it was probably a code red, which means Chris Worden has to jump on it quite immediately, because their plan was, and they were planning to do it that day, was to take out personally guaranteed loans from Funding Circle IWOCA to take out that money to then just pay HMRC back in one big chunk. Yeah. And that's where I said, Chris, please get on the phone to them.
And I want to give a bit of context around this, because people will be watching going, bloody hell, someone owed the HMRC £1 million. So this was a £10 million turnover business. And the reason that they owed HMRC money is because HMRC actually owed them some money. So their biggest client, there was basically a VAT issue. And it was HMRC that had held up the majority of money coming back into this business. Listen, nevertheless, they were still insolvent by only a few £100,000. And that was the crazy thing, because let's talk about what had gone on previous. They're trying to negotiate with HMRC. And HMRC have simply said, listen, if you don't do this within this period of time, we are going to wind you up. Even though we owe you money on this side of the fence, the fact that you owe us more than we owe you means that you're insolvent, and we're going to start legal action. Now, you've hit on something really important. These directors were about to take some significant personally guaranteed loans.
I'm sure they were in the process of applying.
They had. I'd seen the application. And I've just said, guys, listen. And it just sort of goes that, like, these directors were willing to put the family homes on the line. But the reality is if they don't do that, that HMRC debt is an unsecured debt in the business. If they take these loans to pay off HMRC, that HMRC debt becomes a personal debt. It threatens their family. And directors will look at things in rose-tinted glasses and think, well, I will get through this. I just say to them, listen, you need to sleep on this, and you need to be you need to be 1,000,000% that by doing this is going to save that company. And I said, right, let's talk through what options you've got available. So their business was a payroll company, but their main clients they'd worked with for years and years. The clients were really happy with the service that they offered. The clients understood it was their issues with HMRC that had caused this problem with their cash flow. So I went straight in and said, listen guys, if we're a week away or so from HMRC winding you up, your options are fairly limited. So like, I think the next day we got one of the IPs on the phone and we talked through what the options are, and we sort of skirted over what would a CVA look like. CVA is where you pay back the creditors over an extended period of time, generally 5 years. But HMRC were pretty much the only creditor in this business. And HMRC, when it comes to CVAs, they don't like being on their own. And the threat was it would take too long to propose a CVA. And while you're in that drafting of the proposal stage, because listen, there was a really good business here. So a CVA could have been suitable, but the fear was by the time you've proposed the CVA, HMRC could have took action and wound the company up, and they could have rejected it. So, because speed was of the essence, the decision was taken to actually put this business into admin. Okay? Now, bearing in mind that the administrator, that there's hundreds of thousands of pounds owed into this company, which will come in, we just don't know when because of this HMRC issue over here. So we looked at, right, is there a good business here? If there was, this pressure was removed from HMRC, and there was. Can we save jobs by doing administration? Yes, we can. What were the risks? The risks were HMRC would wind the company up. Now, if you're thinking about administration and a company, an accreditor gives a winding up petition against you, you lose the ability to do a director-led administration, and you can go to court to get a court-approved admin, but you're relying on a judge actually agreeing with you, and that was a risk that nobody wanted to take. So we went down the pre-pack route. So before this company went into administration, obviously the directors had to set up a new company and they had to speak to their clients. And that was something they were worried about. And essentially tell the clients, explain what had happened, but the clients sort of accepted the reason this had happened was some issues on their end. So they said, listen, if you can do this, we'll support you in the new company. And the agents valued the business, and they essentially valued the business, what its value really was. And in an insolvency value, there wasn't a huge valuation to this because it was a service-led business. There wasn't many assets. I'm just going to actually get the valuation up now, so I'm talking about accurate numbers. Bear with me, guys. Here we go. Yes, I've got the valuation report here. Now, even though it was a multi-million pound, payroll company, there was no real value in the assets. There was literally tables and chairs. There was some vehicles, but the vehicles were worth more. Sorry, the finance were worth more than the vehicles. So we would class that as being underwater. And because this business, it was only operational with the directors in there, and their clients, their major clients, they were all fairly friendly with them as well. So this business was bought back. I mean, people would think, well, it's a multi-million pound a year payroll company, therefore it's worth millions. It isn't. This business was bought back for just over £50,000. Okay. Now, the way that this worked is the agent valued the business, and then there is a marketing period, and the guys were frightened to death. They're like, Chris, what if somebody makes an offer for the business? Well, that can happen. That's the reason why you have to do a marketing period, is so the powers that be can see that this has been fair market value has been achieved. Anyone could have bought the business. And like with most things, there's a couple of inquiries, people sign an NDA, they get the details of the business. But because this business had those guys involved, okay, and it needed them, it hasn't got any value to anyone else. So the business was put into administration, there was a marketing period that ensued, and then the agents needed an evaluator's report, and the evaluator is a third party. Again, it's a step that the powers that be insist on, to say that A, it's a fair market value and it meets the criteria of an administration. And then the business was sold to their connected company. Now, the HMRC will get a lot of their money back, because remember, they're owed hundreds of thousands of pounds. So the administrator's job now is to recover that money back for the HMRC. There were some DLAs on this job, wasn't there?
Yeah, that was.
Okay, tell me a little bit about what happened with the overdrawn loans, or how you found out about them.
So again, they sent over their balance sheet. There was 2 directors. One of them had, more personal assets than the other. So 2 separate deals had to be done on each overdrawn director's loan, and that's where you stepped in to get into the nitty-gritty of it all. Yeah,
because one director, it had fairly limited personal assets. So when you've got an overdrawn loan account, an insolvency practitioner's got to try and recover the full amount on both. But the reality is if you have limited personal wealth, so you've got little equity in your property, or you have no property at all, little savings, it's not really in the interests of creditors so it wouldn't be in the interest of HMRC for this insolvency practitioner to spend £50,000 chasing this one director, because nothing would come out the end of it. He had no personal assets. So therefore the director made an offer, and he said, I can pay, let me just figure out what the deal was on this. How many jobs? I think, yeah, there we go. He had a £50,000 overdrawn loan account, and he settled it at £5,000. Now, it's in principle, right? Okay. The administrator, the insolvency practitioner, is not got the authority to accept an offer until they've been appointed. But what we do, director first, we're a little bit different. We went through both directors' personal assets, houses, valuations, mortgage redemptions, what their personal income and outcomes were like. And this guy was managed to settle on £5,000 on 50,000. So he got a deal of 10p in the pound, which he was happy with. And on the basis that when the insolvency practitioner gets appointed, everything he's told us is correct.
Yeah.
Now, the other director was slightly different, because he had a bit more equity in his home. But even though he had more equity in his home, when you factor in the cost of making a director bankrupt, okay, which is quite expensive, and an insolvency practitioner does not like risk, a deal was also done on this guy's, and I think he ended up paying about 30p on the pound, and he's got 8 months to pay it. So the outcome was, they've come into our inquiry. They're about to sign the lives away on to pay the HMRC debt and put the family houses on the line. But actually the solution was to put it into administration. Yes, the HMRC will get some money back down the line, and this has allowed them to buy the business back, start again, and yeah, they're out there trading now, aren't they?
Yeah, and it was really lucky, because I remember from the initial call, I think they made their inquiry about 4 a.m. that morning. I was on the phone to them about 8 a.m, but it was the one director that had made the inquiry, and it was the other director that was pushing to get these, personal guaranteed loans. So it was good timing. It was really lucky. So
people have got to take, they've got to take advice early, and maybe not just advice of us. We want call us. We're really good. Go and check our reviews out, but. If they don't call us, they've got to call more than one person, haven't they? And go, what do you think? It's such a big decision.
100%.
But listen, thank you very much for joining us again today.
Always.